Yes, and I am back. So this video is about glorified serial killers. And there's a little bit of a difference with this one particular face here. Um, I would think he was more in the along the lines of with Charles Manson is more it's he's like a cult leader. So he would be in line with like a cult following. So what I wanted to do, his name just popped up and he recently passed away, Charles Manson. So right now his son, or I think his either son or grandson is was on the news recently um trying to gain access to, I guess, his estate. So they're going to court over that, is what I recall. But anyway, I wanted to look at serial killers and who would fit in the category of a serial killer. Well, we have some famous names. John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy. We also have Richard Ramirez. We have people from way back like Ed Gein. We have Aileen Wuornos and David Berkowitz. And then they had Charles Manson. I don't know why they put him there, but I guess because they are like probably they were the most popular or popularized. Gacy, he was named John Wayne Gacy Jr., and he was an American serial killer, and he was a rapist. He sexually assaulted and tortured and murdered at least 33 teenage boys and young men between the years of 1972 and 1978 in Cook County, Illinois. And so he would dress up like I think he even took a picture with a politician. So he was sort of in his, before they found out who he was or his personality really was, he was liked in the community. And so in the bibliography, it goes into depth of how he was. And some people don't even realize that these people even ever existed. And the reason I'm bringing this up, and my title says Glorified Serial Killers, is because I live here in California, and I know they have one in Florida too. Universal Studios, whenever October rolls around, they have like special attractions. And with the special attractions, people dress up for the Halloween events. They have this thing called Halloween Horror Nights. And what happens is if you want to go have a thrill or have fun, they have they have their normal rides, but they also have people that dress up in costume, and they'd have people that have dressed up like clowns. And they've had people to dress up like Jeffrey Dahmer at certain places. They've had people to dress up like some of these, they are like well-known famous serial killers. So it says, who was John Gacy? Well, John Gacy, he was an American serial killer and a rapist who took the lives of 33 young males in Cook County, Illinois, burying most of their bodies under his home. So Gacy had an abusive childhood and he struggled with his own sexuality. So after being convicted of sexual assault in 1968, his murders were uncovered. Although he maintained his innocence, he was found guilty in 1980. Okay. and given multiple death penalties and life sentences. In 1994, he was executed by lethal injection. And so here he is here. It doesn't look like he's scared or worried. So it says he's called the serial killer clown. So this is why they have this hysteria over clowns and what have you. And so, like when you go to these theme parks, they'll have people that dress up like scary clowns. And a lot of that is like in remembrance for these individuals that have done these horrible things. I'm sure the family members of these people who had their sons and their uncles, cousins, brothers murdered by this man are not very happy about them idolizing this. But it has gone on for years and years and years. People have kind of been enthralled in the minds of what serial killers think, how they move, how they act, what they believe in, what they do, what prompts them to be the way they are, and they study them. And now you have people who are basically following them or they glorify them. So the majority of whom had been buried under the house were buried under a garage as well. So others would be recovered by a nearby Des Plaines River. So some bodies were in the river. It says Gacy was a clown performer at children's parties, and when he killed, he sometimes dressed as the alter ego, which he would go by the name as Pogo the Clown. He lured the victims with the promise of construction work and then captured and sexually assaulted and eventually strangled most of them with a rope. And so, while he was in prison in Menard Correctional Center, he took up visual arts and his paintings were shown to the public by way of an exhibition in Chicago Gallery. October 17, 2017, Moloch Auctions in Shirosphere, if I said it, the UK, auctioned off a number of Gacy's artwork as well as crime scene pictures from Gacy's trial. So this is disturbing that they would even do this. So 3 of Gacy's paintings, including 2 originals, I'm Pogo the Clown and They Call Him Mr. Gacy, sold, and you see there's a price here, 4,000 euros, 325 euros. I could be reading the money a wrong way because it's in euros, I believe, which maybe it might be a lot more than here. So it goes on to say that 8 other works went unsold. And so they go on to talk about the lives of the victims, which family in early life, his family in early life. So notorious serial killer John Wayne Gacy, how he was born, when he was born was March 17, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois. The son of a Danish and Polish parents, Gacy and his siblings grew up with a drunken father who would beat the children with a razor strap if they were perceived to be misbehaving. His father was he also physically assaulted Gacy's mother as well. And Gacy's sister Karen would later say that the siblings learned to toughen up against the beatings, and Gacy would not cry. So Gacy suffered further alienation at school, unable to play with other children due to congenital heart failure, condition that was looked upon by his father and as another failing, of course. He later realized he was attracted to men, so he was gay, but he had a problem with his identity of admitting who he was, so he experienced a lot of turmoil over his own personal choice, or sexuality, rather. So it talks about his kids and his wife, his history of sexual assaults, the things that he did to people, and I'm not going to go into that. So this is the picture of him. And so there's a lot going on here. So the thing that's crazy here is when I read the part how they had art of his and they auctioned it off, and that he was involved in visual arts and whatnot. And so even by him, having commit those horrible crimes, they took a liking to his art. They auctioned it off, even for them even doing that. And then this was really crazy. Right here it says October 17, 2017, Moloch's auction, Chirosphere auction off a number of Gacy's artwork as well as the crime scene pictures of Gacy's trial. Who would do something like that? And so this is why I say glorified serial killers. So that hits home. But anyway, it's very disturbing, because when you see things like this, it's like, okay, they did all this horrible stuff to people, but you know, it's like it's glorified. Then we have Jeffrey Dahmer, and some people know him just from word of mouth, or people saying, oh, this guy, he used to eat people and blah, blah, blah. But even on YouTube, they show the trial. Now, they may pull it off because I'm saying this, but that the sister was in one of the videos where they showed her in the court trial, and she was not happy about what happened to her brother. So Jeffrey Dahmer, he was originally named Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer, was also known as a Milwaukee cannibal, and was an American serial killer and sex offender who committed rape, murder, and dismemberment of 17 men and boys between the years of 1978 to 1991. So there's a history on him as well. And it says many of his later murders involved necrophilia and cannibalism, and it goes on. And he had, things in his refrigerator, like parts of people's bodies, and there was a smell coming from his apartment. As I recall, they said that neighbors smelled the smells, but they didn't know where it was coming from. And then they knew it was coming from his apartment, but they didn't know what it was. He had big tubs of like body parts. He had all kind of stuff going on. He was really, really strange guy, but they have had him at Halloween Horror Nights, some of these little horror events. They have people dress up like him, dress up with the glasses and the hair to the side and what have you. So whenever they have like make-believe people that, they resemble like regular guys like this as the crazy serial killer, it's pretty much glorifying these individuals. Then you have Ted Bundy, and he was also one that I had mentioned in a previous video, and I don't know if people realize that he represented himself in court. So his name was Theodore Robert Bundy, and he was an American serial killer, a kidnapper, a rapist, a burglar, and he was also into necrophilia, which is like somebody that has a dead person's body. They've killed them, and they have the body sleeping with them or sitting in the house, and they're talking to the dead body or whatever, interacting with the corpse as if it's still living. So who is probably also having intercourse, with the dead body. There are crazy people out there that are into that stuff. So necrophilia, who assaulted and murdered numerous young women and girls during the 1970s and possibly even earlier than the 70s. So there may be some unaccounted for people who have perished at the hands of this man. They said 30 plus died by him. So he died January the 24th of 1989 in the Florida State Prison, Florida. And so it says that shortly before his execution and after more than a decade of denials, he confessed to 30 homicides that he had committed. And so, as I recall, I remember that he represented himself in court. I remember that he did that, everybody was appalled because they felt like by him representing himself in court, he was reliving all of his killings, and he got a thrill off of that. And so this guy, Ted Bundy, usually it looked or appeared that he would always get young women, and they had similar features. And so he was drawn to, they usually were brunettes. They usually were brunettes, as I recall. And so that was him. And then Richard Ramirez, I remember him. Everybody was afraid when he was around because they were worried that he was, going to come through, slip through your window and be standing over you while you're asleep. But he's also in the line of serial killing. Says Richard Leyva Munoz Ramirez, known as Richard Ramirez, an American serial killer, rapist, and burglar. And they said he was also involved in Satanism. And so I remember hearing that, and that he had a spawn of killings between April 10th to 1984 to August 24th to 1985. He had 14 victims, and he had B-cell lymphoma. That's what his cause of death was, supposedly. It says that he died Green Bay, California, June 7th. And I remember a woman, even after knowing that he did all this horrible stuff, married him while he was in prison. Now, I don't know if they stayed married or not, but I know there was a woman that was all enthralled, and she claimed she was going to be the wife of Richard Ramirez, and she was all on the news. So, there's this glorification of serial killers. Ed Gein, now this is going way back, probably even before most of us were here. It says Edward Theodore Gein, also known as the Butcher of Plainfield. And the scary part about this is that they're in the Midwest, some of these people. It says that he would murder people, and he was a body snatcher. And so he did a lot of crazy stuff too. He had victims Bernice Worden and Mary Hogan, officially confirmed, is what they say, respiratory and heart failure due to a cancer. That's what he died of. So he had a history as well, and I've seen them play like reenactment people that are acting as him in movies. And he would do like grave robbing too, I believe. So it says that Edward Theodore Gein, also known as the Butcher of Plainfield, was an American murderer and a body snatcher, and his crimes committed around his hometown, Plainfield, Wisconsin, gathered widespread notoriety after authorities discovered that Gein had exhumed corpses from the local graveyards and fashioned them as trophies. So this guy was really into keeping dead bodies and stuff like that. He would make, he was the kind of person that would make their skin into lampshades and do, weird stuff like that. Keep their bones and their skin as trophies, different weird stuff. It just didn't make any sense, but he was into all of that. And I've seen them use him as a scary scare actor. And some people are intrigued by this stuff because they want to know what is in the minds of these individuals and where they get this stuff from. And then, so I'm going to, Aileen Wuornos, now she killed men. She killed men, and she had a girlfriend, but she killed men, but the girlfriend reported her because she knew something wasn't right about her. I know a little bit about it because they had like on some of the little sites, they'll show you like documentaries about these people. I believe hers is relatively still showing like on Netflix. There's a documentary about her. David Berkowitz, I think he was the one. I think he might have picked up prostitutes, if I'm not mistaken. There was something on him as well. I think he had a thing where he'd pick up prostitutes. And so he was David Richard Berkowitz, known as the Son of Sam, is what they call him, and a 44 caliber killer. So he's an American serial killer that pleaded guilty to 8 separate shooting attacks and began in New York during the summer of 1976. And so I remember hearing people saying that they were afraid in New York City when this guy was on the streets, because they said that he would, claiming that he received orders from a demon possessed dog or something or other. He had like a lot of crazy issues as well. And he is one of the most notorious serial killers in America. And so I guess women who were streetwalkers were on alert for him. They were scared that, I think he would probably prey upon people that were vulnerable, that were easy pickings, of course. And so I see here they say that they had a CBS News segment of him saying that he was hospitalized and what have you and stuff. So I don't know if he's even still alive or not. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't anymore. I think they had his face in here. But these serial killers, they rebirth them and bring them to light all over again around the holidays. And Charles Manson, we already know about him. He just passed away. And so that is like a famous situation as well. And so with him, what I've known it to be is that it says that he's an American criminal and cult leader. In the 1960s, he formed this group and it became known as the Manson family, a quasi-commune in California. Now, this is what I remember as a kid. He would make these scary faces on the news and he looked like the devil to me. And I remember seeing it, how he was saying that when he got out, he was going to get people. He was going to do what he did that got him in there. He was going to do it again. And he mentioned something about race war. And then he was crazy. Yeah, he was really crazy. That's what I remember. And that he still had a following. He had people who still were following him, doing music tapes and conversing with him, even when after all of this stuff was over and done and stuff. And then I know a couple of the people that were in his group. One lady, she tried to, every time petition to get out, and she ended up dying. She got really swollen and she died. And then another lady, I think she was trying to be up for parole. They were the ones that were the main girls that were, flower girls or whatever, that were following him. And every time they would go up for parole hearing, they'd always be denied. And so there was a lot of stuff behind, a lot of controversy behind them. I know he killed this famous actress and some other people in Hollywood Hills area. And so it probably talks more about it. And so I'm just briefly touching on it. But he was pretty much popularized in media and TV, books, television shows. But when you talk about Black people who like the Tookie Williams and all of those people, you don't never really see them. You have to look them up. They don't glorify them. But these people, they're white, or they are white looking. They're always like, they got books, they got movies, they're on TV, they talk about them, they talk about their families on the news. Oh, I'm claiming their estate and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, how the hell does he have an estate, after he did all of this stuff? But, I'm not surprised. So what are your thoughts about this? Because this is pretty disturbing to me, even with the Gacy thing, that they auction off the scenes of his crime. So they glorify these serial killers. And yet we say that these individuals have no privilege. I have not seen one Black guy that if he's been involved in a crime, you don't even have to do a crime. They don't like you. They don't like you. There's no book about you. It's nothing about you, and if it is, it's hated. You're talked about. They hate your guts. These people, they're like glorified. Oh wow, he did this, he dismembered people. They're swooning over this stuff. They're auctioning off his photos and his pictures, and then they're reveling in it. And so this is what you see. And so I just thought, you know, if you don't understand what's going on, that there is certain people that they favor over others, that even if they do the most horrible, heinous crimes, they're left with, you know, their family is left with, oh, we're sorry, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, here's all the money from the books. Here's all the money from the movies. Or, you know, do they ever take that money and give it to the families that suffered behind the fate of these individuals? I wonder, maybe, maybe not. So, you know, it's just sad. And this guy, Jeffrey Dahmer, believe it or not, most of the guys that he liked to go to these clubs, these gay clubs, and he would frequent them, he would always try to get the black guys. He would get the black guys and he would do stuff to them and he murdered a few of them. As a matter of fact, I think most of the guys he was after were black. There was one Hawaiian guy, and then there was but you know, most of them, they were men of color, you know. So I just think it's really sick. But I thought for you young people who hadn't heard of these stories, and you see this when you go to Universal Studios or when you go to some of these places, you know, these theme attractions and scare places, and you see these names, John Wayne Gacy or the Scary Clown, Jeffrey Dahmer, some guy with a bunch of body parts, that's him. That's these people. You know, girl all chained up and hooked up on something. That's Ted Bundy. You know, people using their skin as clothing or face, you know. And the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that is glorified. It's in movies. Everybody talks about it. They use it at theme parks. It's real. It's based off a true story. And so I won't even go into that. Well, let me see. Chainsaw Massacre, the Roadhouse. It has to do with a real, if I put in the real Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it'll bring up the actual real thing. Now it talks about Ed Gein, but there was another, we just talked about Ed Gein, and they're showing you the houses and stuff. So I guess they're comparing Ed Gein, but there really was a family. And I believe there was a family that, as I would recall, they said there was this family that lived in a house and that these people were really, you know, kind of like inbred type folks. And they were all not really well put together. And that they really were, you know, they would, you know, people could, you know, how you've seen the movie, how you get a flat tire, you're stuck, and you have to go and ask for help, and then they never see you again. And so they were out in the sticks somewhere. So that's what I've heard, that it really was a family that was doing that, and then that people went missing. And so here, I'm looking at it right here. So even though people don't want to believe this, it is true. They're talking about Ed Gein. I guess maybe they're trying to say that he's more the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But I believe there was another family that fit the persona of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because as you've seen in the movie, seen that he had like a bunch of weird family members that kind of followed the same suit. But anyway, yeah, so these stories are not really made up, unfortunately. And so here you see right here, I think the reason why they show Ed Gein is because he did keep people's body parts, their skin, and he kept their skins and what have you. But actually, I think this right here, The Real Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there's a book, and I believe this guy might be the one actually, Cleason. Is Robert Elmer Cleason was accused of fatally shooting and dismembering and burying two Mormon missionaries. So there may be more. So he's another one. But believe it or not, a lot of this is from the past. You are in now the present, and a lot of what has happened before affects what's going on now. And so there are not a lot of happy people. Because if you knew about what happened from before, you wouldn't be happy either. Because some people are allowed to get away with things as opposed others aren't. And so this is a perfect example right here, believe it or not, that we have individuals that can murder people and dismember their bodies, and then they auction their crime scenes off to a bunch of people. That's just like the Get Out movie. You have people, they pretend to be educated and like they're so intelligent and better and high class, and then they turn out to be the sickest individuals you ever did want to meet and don't want to meet, really. And so this is where all this is coming from, I believe, is that even today you have people, they don't think that it's something wrong with it. They don't see anything wrong with this. But a lot of people have complained, like, why do you have these people as your scare actors when they really existed? Somebody out some people died because of these individuals. So I'm just not to put a salt in the parade in the party, but it's sad, but this is where this comes from. So I don't know. What do you think about it? There are glorified serial killers. There are killers in the world. And it seems like those people, they get lifted up and it's a big deal. And so I think it's sick. That's my opinion. So anyway, thanks for listening.